Norm Mineta was in the bunker with Cheney, and so the fact that that wasn't in the 9/11 Commission report was rather odd, don't you think? Yeah. Who was that young man? Did anybody ask who that young man was?
How could Dick Cheney, or anyone in the administration, especially after an aide warned him a plane was 50 miles out and 2 planes had already struck the World Trade Center, allow the Pentagon to be struck?
You know, am I prepared to believe that Dick Cheney would be capable of knowing about this kind of attack on the Pentagon, for example, and allowing it to happen? Well, from what I know about Dick Cheney, yeah.
(9:59), New York City, New York. The South Tower of the World Trade Center, 110 stories tall, collapses to the ground in approximately 10 seconds. 29 minutes later, the North Tower follows suit, also collapsing in approximately 10 seconds. Later that evening, at 5:20, World Trade Center Building 7, 47 stories tall, collapses to the ground in under 7 seconds. The official explanation is that falling debris from the North Tower created a series of fires inside the building. If this is true, it would be the 3rd steel-frame skyscraper in history to completely collapse because of damage and fire. The first 2 would be the Twin Towers. February 23rd, 1991. One Meridian Plaza, a 38-story skyscraper in Philadelphia, burned for 18 hours across 8 floors. It is later described by officials as the most significant fire of the century. It did not collapse. October 17, 2004. A 56-story skyscraper in Caracas, Venezuela, built in 1976, burned for over 17 hours and spread across 26 floors. It did not collapse. February 13th, 1975. A 3-alarm fire broke out between the 9th and 14th floors of the North Tower.
No one died. The building was unoccupied. The fire began in an electrical wiring closet on the 11th floor. There should have been fire stops to prevent it from spreading, but there weren't. The fire spread to 6 other floors. Even without a sprinkling system, fire department officials and building officials here say that there's no chance the World Trade Center could become a type of towering inferno.
The fire is so intense, it leads to the installation of sprinkler systems, which would come in handy on May 19th, 1975, when 7 fires strike the complex. The South Tower had garbage fires dispersed between the 25th and 36th floor, and the North Tower had a fire on the 11th floor. 6 of the fires were minor, but the 7th on the 32nd floor of the South Tower caused heavy damage. Guess what? They did not collapse. September 11th, 2001. 2 110-story skyscrapers, completed in 1973, burned for 56 minutes over 8 floors and 103 minutes over 5 floors, respectively, before collapsing completely to the ground. Some argue that this was due to the construction of the Twin Towers. The Twin Towers were composed of 200,000 tons of steel and 425,000 cubic yards of concrete. The core of each tower was a rectangular pillar 87 by 133 feet, comprised of 47 steel box columns ranging from 36 by 16 to 52 by 22 inches. The North Tower was completed in 1970, standing at 1,368 feet tall, and the South Tower was completed in 1973, reaching 1,362 feet tall, making them the tallest buildings in the world at the time. They were designed to withstand multiple impacts from a Boeing 707, the largest aircraft at its time. An analysis, released in 1964, claims that the buildings were investigated and found to be safe in an assumed collision with a 707 traveling at 600 miles per hour. Such collision would result in only local damage which could not cause collapse or substantial damage to the building. A 707 has 4 engines instead of 2, and its cruise speed is 607 miles per hour. The Boeing 767s that struck the North and South Tower were traveling at 440 and 540 miles per hour, respectively.
Breaking news on WCBS 880, right here, right now.
I believe if we can get in touch with him, we have a witness who saw what happened at the World Trade Center.
This apparently was a commuter plane that smashed into it with such force that the windows of the Pick-a-Bagel smashed with a big bang. Everybody was very frightened.
Did you manage to see what kind of plane it was?
I couldn't tell. It was a smaller plane. It looked like a smaller plane, but I couldn't tell. I'm not really sure.
A medium-sized body plane with engines on both sides. Almost like a gray-black color in nature on the plane.
I would say it wasn't a huge jet, but it was a plane that sounded like it was a fighter jet overhead.
I work right next door at 74 Trinity Place. We heard the first one come in. I didn't know what it was. It sounded like a missile.
Oh my God, Ed, another plane just hit the World Trade Center. Another plane. It was a medium-sized plane. Unbelievable.
It would appear, Jim, as if there's more smoke coming from the ground at some point.
When we used to have another, things have fallen to the ground and are burning. And we have...
One gentleman told me he was on the 65th floor standing next to an elevator when the elevator exploded and knocked him out of his shoes. Another woman said that she was working on the 49th floor and she's seen people in the stairwells with burns, broken arms. People are passing out of the stairwells from the heat. She says there's a lot of heat and smoke. It's a horrible scene here. I'm live at Broadway and Fulton. Allison Keyes, WCBS 880 News.
All right, thank you, Allison.
Basically, there's people running around down the street. All the glass panes that are on the bottom part of the World Trade Center are all blown out. When I first heard it and ran over to the window, it looked like there was fire on the bottom floor.
Well, they're ahead there. And all of this, the world...
Oh, wait. Oh, my God. Oh, my God, the building fell. Are you there? The building just fell.
You said it sounded like the 4th of July. You heard a big explosion before the building fell?
I saw it as it was happening, and it sounded as if you had 100 of those little black cat firecrackers and you lit them all off at once. That's what it sounded like. It sounded like the finale of the 4th of July over the East River.
Oh, my
We just witnessed some kind of secondary follow-up explosion.
10 o'clock Eastern Time this morning, just collapsing on itself. We have no idea what caused this.
Almost looks like one of those planned implosions.
As if a demolition team set off. When you see the old demolitions of these old buildings, it folded down on itself and it is not there anymore.
If you wish to bring anybody who's ever watched a building being demolished on purpose knows that if you're going to do this, you have to get at the under infrastructure of a building and bring it down.
Right now, police have to determine is whether that explosion was caused from the initial impact of the plane or whether it was something that was exploded on the ground. Generally speaking, for a building to collapse in on itself like that, it would seem to indicate that there could have been an explosion, a bomb planted on the ground that would make the building collapse within itself.
By that evening, eyewitnesses and experts alike were rushing to defend the official narrative of events, claiming that raging jet fuel fires melted the steel inside the Twin Towers.
I saw this plane come out of nowhere and just ream right into the side of the Twin Tower, exploding through the other side. And then I witnessed both towers collapse, one first and then the second, mostly due to structural failure because the fire was just too intense.
When one of those airplanes crashed into one of the towers, it was the equivalent of a 6-point earthquake.
Marlene Davis is the Dean of Architecture at the University of Tennessee. She calls the 110-story tall twin tower tube structures. That means there are no internal columns holding it up.
You know, when we saw this yesterday, people said, oh my goodness, there was a bomb on there. There must have been a bomb that collapsed.
Must have been a bomb below.
Right, that finished the job. Well, it turns out we heard from experts who said that, you know what, the fire on those floors, probably 1,500 degrees. Steel can only withstand so much because the steel structure that holds the building building up was on the outside, and essentially the building started to melt and it gave way and it toppled.
Engineers suspect the temperatures inside the crash areas could have quickly reached well over 1,000 degrees, perhaps approaching 2,000 degrees, beyond the melting point of any steel.
They were not designed, perhaps, to take a direct strike from something the size of a 737 or an Airbus, perhaps fully loaded with fuel. Steel will melt.
Physics professor and explosives expert Van Romero.
Even if there was no secondary explosives in the building, hitting the having the airplane hit the building where it did, a large amount of weight above the damaged location, that damaged location being further damaged by the fire, that structure could no longer support the weight above it, and the collapse ensues.